Do you know why some older women effortlessly attract younger men while others get trapped in awkward, uncomfortable situations that end in rejection? It's not what you think. It's not about age. It's not about looks. It's not about money. It's something far more powerful, something hidden in the depths of your unconscious mind that Carl Jung, one of history's greatest psychologists, spent decades uncovering. If you've ever felt that electric connection with a younger man, only to watch it disappear the moment things got deeper, or if you've found yourself acting in ways that felt completely unlike you around younger men, this discovery will change everything you thought you knew about these relationships. Because what Jung found goes against every piece of dating advice you've ever heard. After decades of studying the human mind, Jung identified specific unconscious patterns that older women fall into without even realizing it. Patterns that instantly kill attraction and turn what could be passionate connections into uncomfortable memories you'd rather forget. But here's what's fascinating. The women who understand these psychological traps don't just avoid them. They use Jung's insights to become absolutely magnetic to younger men. The truth is, there are 5 critical psychological mistakes that sabotage these relationships from the inside out. And once you understand them, you'll see exactly why some attempts succeed while others fail so painfully. Let me tell you about something Jung called the shadow, those unconscious parts of ourselves that take control without us even knowing it. And there's one shadow that destroys relationships with younger men faster than anything else: the mother archetype. Picture this. You're a 47-year-old woman who meets a charming 34-year-old man at a dinner party. The chemistry is undeniable. The conversation flows naturally, and you feel genuinely excited about someone for the first time in years. But then something shifts. Without realizing it, you start treating him differently. When he mentions he's stressed about work, you immediately offer solutions. When he's making a decision, you find yourself giving advice he never asked for. When he wants to try something new, you can't help but point out the potential risks. You think you're being helpful, caring, supportive, but what's actually happening is much deeper and more destructive. Jung discovered that we all carry ancient patterns in our unconscious mind, what he called archetypes. And for women, especially those who have raised children or taken care of others, the mother archetype can activate automatically when we care about someone. The problem is, a younger man who's attracted to you isn't looking for another mother. He already has one. I knew a woman named Sophia, 52 years old, who fell into this trap completely. She met a 36-year-old artist named Miguel, and their initial connection was electric. But gradually, Sophia began mothering him. She'd pack him lunches for his art shows, worry about his financial stability, and constantly ask if he was taking care of himself. She thought she was showing love. But what Miguel felt was suffocation. Here's what Jung understood. When the mother archetype takes over, it changes your entire energy. You stop being a woman he desires and become a caretaker he feels obligated to. The attraction dies because you're no longer relating to him as an equal. You're relating to him as someone who needs your protection and guidance. But there's something even more insidious about this trap. When you activate his unconscious sun response, you create a psychological dynamic that makes romance impossible. No matter how attracted he was initially, his psyche starts categorizing you as mother figure instead of potential partner. And once that shift happens, it's almost impossible to reverse. Now, this leads us to Jung's most powerful discovery about relationships: projection. This is when we unconsciously project our own fears and insecurities onto others, and it's absolutely devastating in age-gap relationships. Here's what happens. When an older woman feels insecure about her age, she starts projecting that insecurity onto the younger man. She assumes he's judging her, that he's comparing her to younger women, that he must be thinking she's too old for him. But here's the shocking truth. In most cases, he wasn't thinking any of those things until she started acting like he was. Let me share a story that perfectly illustrates this. Isabella, a 49-year-old lawyer, met a 31-year-old photographer named Daniel at an art gallery. Their conversation was captivating, and Daniel was clearly interested. But the moment Isabella learned his age, everything changed. She started making self-deprecating jokes about being old enough to be his mother. She began questioning whether he was serious about her. She constantly brought up their age difference, apologizing for it, making it the center of every interaction. What Isabella didn't realize was that Daniel had barely noticed their age difference until she made it impossible to ignore. Her projections turned a non-issue into the main issue. She created the very problem she was afraid of. Jung called this the shadow projection, and it's one of the most self-defeating patterns humans engage in. When you project your age anxiety onto a younger man, you're essentially telling him that your age is a problem. You're teaching him to see it as an obstacle when he might have seen it as irrelevant or even attractive. Think about this carefully. Every time you make a comment about being too old for something, every time you apologize for your age, every time you act like you need to compensate for being older, you're sending a clear message. That being older is something negative. And if you believe it's negative, why wouldn't he start believing it too? The women who succeed in these relationships do the exact opposite. They own their age with such confidence that it becomes part of their appeal. They never apologize for their experience, never make excuses for their years, and never project their insecurities onto the men they're dating. But here's where Jung's insights get even deeper. He discovered that we all wear masks, what he called the persona, to fit into society's expectations. And when older women try to attract younger men, they often create a completely false persona, thinking it will make them more appealing. This is where things get truly destructive, because creating a fake persona always backfires. Always. I remember hearing about Carmen, a 46-year-old executive who spent thousands on cosmetic procedures, changed her entire wardrobe to match what 25-year-olds were wearing, and even started pretending to like music and activities she actually hated. When she met Ricardo, a 29-year-old entrepreneur, she thought her younger persona would win him over. But something strange happened. The more Carmen tried to be someone she wasn't, the less interested Ricardo became. He could sense something was off, even if he couldn't put his finger on what it was. The energy felt forced, unnatural, uncomfortable. Here's what Jung understood that most people miss. Authenticity is magnetic. When you're genuinely yourself, you radiate an energy that's impossible to fake. But when you're performing, pretending, or trying to be someone you're not, that inauthenticity creates an invisible barrier that repels people. A younger man who's genuinely attracted to an older woman isn't looking for a young woman in disguise. If he wanted that, he'd simply date someone his own age. What draws him to you is exactly what you are. A woman with depth, experience, and a fully formed sense of self. The most successful women in these relationships are those who have done what Jung called individuation. They've become fully themselves. They're not trying to fit into anyone else's idea of what they should be. They're simply, authentically, unapologetically who they are. And there's something else Jung discovered that's crucial to understand. Jung discovered that every man carries within his unconscious a feminine aspect called the anima, and every woman carries a masculine aspect called the animus. And here's where it gets fascinating. What a younger man's anima is actually seeking in an older woman is nothing like what most women think. The anima isn't looking for a mother figure, and it's not looking for someone trying to be young. It's seeking what Jung called the wise woman archetype. Someone who embodies feminine wisdom, depth, and emotional maturity. But here's the catch. You can't perform this archetype. You can only embody it if you've actually developed these qualities within yourself. Let me tell you about Elena, a 51-year-old artist who had gone through a difficult divorce and spent years in therapy working on herself. When she met Marcus, a 33-year-old writer, she wasn't trying to impress him or prove anything. She was simply present, grounded in who she had become through her life experiences. Marcus was drawn to something he couldn't quite name. Elena's calm presence, her emotional depth, the way she could discuss life's complexities without getting overwhelmed or dramatic. She had what Jung would call integrated wisdom, not just experience, but experience that had been processed and transformed into genuine insight. This is what the anima in younger men unconsciously seeks. A woman who has done her inner work, who has faced her shadows and integrated them, who can offer emotional depth and stability not from a place of control, but from genuine inner peace. But when women try to force this dynamic, when they try to be the wise mentor or the experienced teacher, it becomes manipulation rather than authentic attraction. The energy shifts from magnetic to manipulative, and younger men can sense the difference immediately. The secret lies in understanding that you can't try to be the wise woman. You can only become her through genuine self-development, through facing your own psychological patterns, through what Jung called the individuation process. And this brings us to Jung's most important teaching, individuation. This is the process of becoming who you truly are, separate from society's expectations, family conditioning, and your own unconscious patterns. And here's the truth that changes everything. Women who haven't completed their individuation process will struggle in relationships with younger men, no matter what techniques they try. Think about it this way. If your sense of worth depends on external validation, if you need a man's attention to feel valuable, if you're still trying to prove something to yourself or others, that neediness will be felt instantly. And neediness, regardless of age, is never attractive. But when a woman has done her inner work, when she has developed what Jung called self-realization, she radiates a completely different energy. She's not looking for someone to complete her, because she's already whole. She's not seeking validation, because she validates herself. She's not trying to fill a void, because she's learned to fill it from within. I think of Patricia, a 48-year-old therapist who had spent years working on her own psychological development. When she met James, a 35-year-old architect, she approached the connection from a place of genuine abundance rather than lack. She wasn't thinking about what he could give her or whether she was good enough for him. She was simply enjoying getting to know another interesting human being. This shift in energy, from seeking to sharing, from neediness to wholeness, from proving to simply being, is what Jung identified as the key to all authentic relationships. When you stop trying to get something from a relationship and start offering from your own fullness, everything changes. James was attracted not to what Patricia might do for him, but to who she was as a complete person. Her age became irrelevant because her presence was so compelling. She had something that can't be faked and can't be learned from a dating guide: genuine self-possession. Here's what Jung understood that most people miss. Attraction isn't about having the right techniques or saying the right things. It's about being the right person, someone who has done the inner work to become authentically themselves. And this brings us to Jung's ultimate insight about these relationships. Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to an understanding of ourselves. When you feel uncomfortable about an age gap, when you worry about what others think, when you feel the need to justify or defend your connection with a younger man, that discomfort is pointing to inner work that still needs to be done. The women who thrive in these relationships aren't the ones who have figured out how to manipulate or convince younger men to want them. They're the women who have become so comfortable with themselves, so confident in their own worth, so clear about who they are, that age becomes just another interesting detail rather than a source of anxiety. When you understand Jung's teachings, when you recognize your shadow patterns, stop projecting your insecurities, embrace your authentic self, understand what the masculine psyche actually seeks, and complete your own individuation process. You don't just become more attractive to younger men. You become more attractive to everyone, including yourself. Because at the end of the day, what Jung discovered is this: the most magnetic people aren't those who try to be what others want. They're those who have become fully, authentically, unapologetically themselves. And that kind of self-possession is rare, beautiful, and absolutely irresistible, regardless of age. The question isn't whether you can attract a younger man. The question is whether you've become the kind of person who attracts authentic connections with anyone. And that journey starts with understanding your own psychological patterns and doing the inner work to transform them. That's the real secret Jung uncovered. Not tactics or techniques, but the profound attractiveness of a person who has learned to be completely, courageously themselves.